a lack of friction when you get your hand in the glove and it's custom made, and you just know that your training is coming into like an XY, isn't that what they call it, an XY place, where your training and your giftings come right into the timing of God. You know, you've got the chronos and the kairos.
Oh, you got to say something about that. You talk to us about the difference between the two.
Okay.
Well, chronos would be time on my watch. You know,
or the calendar.
I see there's a certain time, and I know I'm supposed to do something at that time. The kairos is God's timing when He brings an event together. For instance, Moses leading the people out of Egypt. What had to happen for all those things to concern? Well, there's about 5 things that had to happen. Moses had to be ready. He had to be prepared by God. The Pharaoh that knew not Moses had to die because Moses was under a death sentence until his death. He couldn't have gone back into Egypt because he was shoot him dead or alive kind of thing. Okay, the people had to cry out for deliverance. Okay, for the iniquity of the Amorites had to come to a full. Okay. And so therefore God set up all those things converged in a point of time, in a chronos time, that Moses was able to lead the people out of Egypt. So it was God's timing and God's events bringing all these things together.
Wow.
So it's the confluence of the two, confluence of the chronos and the kairos.
So would you also say, you talked about this, I mean, this is wonderful, this whole understanding of the prophetic and how to now pray more specifically as an intercessor, but now how to do it strategically. Would you say, I heard you earlier talk about not only kairos, chronos, which is biblical, you also talked about Tammuz, this being the month of Tammuz. Those seasons and cycles, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, would we can still consider them very much so relevant? Talk to us about where did they come from? How did we know that there were seasons and cycles biblically?
Okay. First, we should talk about Chuck Pierce in that.
Yes, wonderful. Your relationships, your connections.
Is our connection with Prophet Chuck Pierce from Denton, Texas. Actually, now you probably know that he's moved into a brand new place just this very week.
Wow.
And this coming Sunday will be their first time in the new center, and it's in a new city because God came by Cindy Jacobs a few years ago and told them, you're to be over in Corinth, which is the next town over. And now they've been in Denton for a long time. But see, the season is changing. And told to go to Corinth, I got to work for you over there. And that's where they're going to branch out from there. Well, Chuck was heading up the Strategic Prayer Network. At the time, I think it was called the Spiritual Warfare Network. Then they changed it to Strategic Prayer Network, and from there it was Global Apostolic Prayer Network, because as a prophet, he is one of the foremost prophets today. As he found as he went forward, God showed him that new horizon, spoke to him, he would give it a new name, because names are important. Just like Abram had got his name changed to Abraham, and everybody, God wanted to give Peter a new name and Paul a new name because they got a new identity as they moved forward.
That's right.
So he saw that. So the Lord revealed to him that he was had an Issachar anointing, who understood the times and the seasons for going out to do the war. And so he opened up a prophetic school called the Issachar School, in which he started talking about the Moedim, which are the 7 cycles or the 7 feasts of the Lord. Leviticus 23, really important. Read Leviticus 23. Now, in the 7, it's interesting in the calendar, which is the Hebrew calendar, because we usually think of a calendar, it's rectangular, and we see numbers on it, and we flip it, so we're not really thinking in terms of movement. But in the Moedim, it's really in a circle, and it's circular, and that's the cycle. And as it goes, it's like on a railroad track, you might say. the wheels on the train are moving, but they're not spinning around in the same place.
Sure.
They're going cycle after cycle, coming and repeating the cycle, but it's moving on down the timeline of God, down where we are. And as you move in the time with what God has planned, its seasons and cycles, it's a lot easier if you're in the timing and not ahead of God or behind God, but actually right in with what He's doing at that time in that season. And Chuck Pierce is excellent in those teachings, so we did learn a lot from that. And from that, it really stoked things in us to start doing our own research. And you can get a lot of this in. Right, Google it. You can just Google this. You'll get lots and lots and lots of information on this.
And so from the Old Testament to the New Testament, the following of the seasons and the cycles can help those that are interested in intercession. It can help guide your timing and strategic.
And so much more, as you well know, that as you enter into each of these seasons, and they're called the feasts of the Lord. We used to call them the Jewish feasts.
That's right.
But it doesn't say that. It says the feast of the Lord. So we thought, whoa, that means us, we're God's kids, we can do that too.
That's right.
So we started doing it. And
so the feast would be the Passover, the Pentecost, the Feast of Tabernacles.
Well, unleavened bread is in there. The Feast of First Fruits, really big. That's the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And Pentecost. And then even when you start studying it, you see that those are the spring feasts.
Yes.
Which are related to a harvest. The first harvest. Then there's the latter harvest over here, which are those are the fall feasts.
Trumpets, the atonement, and tabernacle.
Absolutely, which is what we're moving towards. And the church, the whole church of Jesus Christ, is moving towards tabernacles. But first, we're going to be coming through trumpets and atonement. So we would say literally that the blowing of trumpets represents the rapture and moving into the second coming and more into the millennial reign of Jesus.
Well, it's interesting. The Feast of Trumpets occurs on the first day of a month. It's the only feast that occurs on the first day of a month. And the only way you biblically know when the month begins is to sight the moon from the Temple Mount. Now, the moon can actually appear any one of 3 days. It can appear early, or it can appear late, or it can appear in the middle of those 3 days. So the Feast of Trumpets is known as the day that no man knows. We don't know which day it's going to be until it happens. Okay? But Jesus said He would return on the day that no man knows. So we look for the return. We look for the return of Jesus Christ on the Feast of Trumpets. And it says that He will return with the shout and the trumpet of God.
That's
okay. Now the trumpet of God indicates that God sounds the shofar. Okay.
Yes, and that's in his new book.
And we actually have a shofar.
Yes, we do.
We have the new booklet called The Mystery of the Shofar. And everybody that blows a shofar and everybody that hears a shofar should have this booklet, but it explains all of the things surrounding the shofar, even what it is, how to use it, and so forth and so on.
I was just going to interject that because we have lost for a great deal of the church for 2,000 years the Jewish roots of what our new covenant means with the Lord. Therefore, it's a general teaching in the church that, hey, we don't know when He's coming.
Sure.
Because they believe that we don't know the day or the season when He's coming. Yeah, right. But we do know it's the day that no man knows. Mm-hmm. And when you get into your Jewish roots and find out that that's actually a specific day, Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, hey, then we can know that when it does come, it will be then.
Yes.
We don't know what year it will be.
That's right.
But we can. He said, look around you and see what's happening. Jesus said
That's what He said.
You know, if you know at night that the sun is red, and you know what kind of day you're going to have the next morning, you ought to be able to figure out the times and seasons of God.
That's right.
Especially for those who have His own Spirit.
That's right.
Yes.
You know, beginning the month of Elul, which will begin August 1st this year, not always on August 1st, but this year it is, that is the day of preparation for the great feasts of the fall. And the first preparation is for the Feast of Trumpets. And for those who blow the shofar, traditionally, in our Hebrew tradition, they blow the shofar every day, the month of Elul, in preparation for the day that they will blow the shofar in the grand manner at the Feast of Trumpets. Now, it's interesting that Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, follows that, okay? 10 days after that. So we're preparing for these feasts, and then after that we have tabernacles. So all this is a preparation, and it's all a renewal. We renew everything at these times of these feasts.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can use, and we can use those feasts as timing.
We can. Yes.
Tools, resources in doing our intercession yearly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, it's also true that Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the year, is also on the day of the Feast of Trumpets. Now, Rosh Hashanah is really a civil holiday to begin the Hebrew calendar.
Sure.
But it's not a biblical day. It's not in the Bible. So the Bible calls Yom Kippur, the Feast of Trumpets,
sure.
So Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah and Rosh Hashanah are the same day. And so today in our synagogues, when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, they celebrate it with the blowing of trumpets. They coincide both. But many people don't know that they're really celebrating the biblical feast of Yom Teruah.